Hi gang, um, I'm back. I think we're just going to do a short video today on the sidewalk bleeding. Again, we're going to continue working on that through the week. You have the form that you're trying to fill out, that in-depth thought activity. Okay, so I think that what we're looking to do today, probably just keep it simple, a little bit, step by step every day. Today we really want to look at initial incident, which we haven't talked about very much yet, and conflict and how conflict works. Excuse me. So, our initial incident in a story is the thing that starts the story off. And a lot of times you think, well, the story's already started. Like once you get the first word, you get the people, you know where it is, things are happening, that's a story. But that's not really a story. That's just people, that's events, that's things that are going on don't necessarily make a story. A story is like a joke. There's a setup and then there's a punchline in a joke. In a story, there's a conflict and there's a resolution. So for the story, we need to think of, well, what's the thing that starts a change in the story that makes us wonder what's going to happen? What's the thing that begins building suspense? Where does that start to come in, rather than we just see a bunch of characters interacting in their setting? So that's what that page about initial incident is about. So I'm going to bring us back to what we did last week. When we looked at Cinderella, Cinderella has a lot of different places where we can say this is the initial incident, right? We can say that it starts kind of almost before the story starts. Cinderella's mother dies, and now we need to. Now, what a good way to think of initial incident is, what are we wondering? So we have something to wonder about. Well, how's she going to turn out? What's going to happen to Cinderella now that her mother has died? And that story works toward that, right? She becomes a princess. That's our climax. But how do we get there? We can also say the story is Cinderella's gets a step's family, her stepmother, her stepsisters, and they start treating her badly. And how's that going to turn out? Is she going to get out of that, or is it going to be forever? So maybe that's the initial incident. Father marries um, the stepmother. Maybe the initial incident that really starts the story, starts a conflict, gets us wondering is there's a ball. The ball is going to happen, and they're going to find out who the princess is, and Cinderella wants to go to the ball. So that could be what we see as being the initial incident. So we have different options, and different people can disagree on those options. There's not necessarily a right answer. Me and Miss Lowen and Miss Teed and Mr. Briggs, we can all have different ideas on a story on what the initial incident is. That's okay. We just need to be able to explain why we think that is. So that's what you're looking for on that second page of the in-depth thought activity. You're looking for an initial incident on the sidewalk bleeding. So we have the story, we know who the characters are, we know where we are, and what are we wondering? What are we trying to find out? Where's that start? What is the thing that begins that story and starts to build suspense for us? So what I want you to do is actually come up with two ideas, two choices that are possible initial incidents. And then you're going to decide on which one you think is the best. But don't just pinpoint it. Also tell me, why do you think that? Why do you think? So if we're doing Cinderella again, why would you think that the initial incident is when the ball is called? I might argue that, and the thing that I might argue is, well, up until then, that's just the setting. That's Cinderella's regular life, as she lives with her stepsisters and her stepmother, and they don't treat her well. And it's the ball that starts to make us think there could be a change. Is this going to be something different in her life? Okay, so that's what you're trying to pinpoint. Where's that spot, and what's your explanation for why it's the initial incident? The next page goes with that, and you can even do the next page first, because the next page is about conflict. There are different kinds of conflict, right? One type of conflict is human versus human. Those are clear ones a lot of times. There's a good guy and there's a bad guy, and they're fighting against each other. There's a main character and there's somebody who doesn't like them, and they're fighting, and somebody's going to win. Other types of conflict are just human versus the environment. So that could be somebody is out in the woods and they've been lost. And we're trying to figure out, are they going to be able to survive? Are they going to be able to find things to eat? Are they going to be able to keep warm and keep safe? And are they going to escape the forest? And the conflict is against nature itself. Right? There's also internal conflict. There's conflict human versus human themselves. So that character is, what should I do? And they have things that are pulling them in one direction and things in their mind that are pulling them in the other direction, and we're trying to figure out, well who's going to win there? What part of that person is going to win? So for conflict, you need an antagonist. You need somebody that you're fighting against. So it could be nature, it could be another person, it could be yourself. Okay? That's what we want to find out, and it goes with Initial Incident a little bit. We want to figure out in that story, who do we think is the antagonist? Who is Andy fighting against? What is Andy fighting against? Is it a thing? Is it a person? Is it an idea? Is it himself? Is it nature? What's he fighting against? And I want you to do the same thing. I want you to say to, I want you to I want you to find two possible antagonists, right? So Cinderella antagonists are fairly clear, but we might say, well, one of the antagonists is Cinderella's self-confidence, right? Because she doesn't want to just step up and say, I'm the one that you've been dancing with. So we could have kind of a somebody reasonably say that that's an antagonist, but our main antagonist is human versus human, the stepmother and stepsisters, right, are the antagonists. This story is a little more complicated. It's a little harder to figure out, well, who's he fighting against? What's going on? I mean, there's some obvious things, but there are some things that in this story you're trying to figure out, well, who's going to win? Andy or this thing or this person? Okay, so that's all that we're doing for today. We're doing those 2 pages. We're going to come up with 2 possible answers for each one, for Initial Incident and Antagonist, and we're going to then put down the one that we think is the right one or the best one, and we're going to explain really quickly why we think that. All right, have a good day. I will see you again shortly. Bye-bye.